Здравствуйте, comrade. Today we're going to talk about black powder. Now, black powder has been around for centuries. Smokeless powder, which is used in all modern ammunition today, was developed around 1894, but centuries before that, since the dawn of time, not entirely the dawn of time, but you know what I mean, we had black powder. And black powder had some pretty big disadvantages compared to smokeless. Mostly being fouling, it made it cloudy, yada yada yada. But today we're going to talk about how to load it, the differences maybe, and so on and so forth. So right here I have in my hands just a little black powder pistol. This is actually a kit that I put together from Traditions. It's not the highest quality thing, but this was actually my first black powder gun. It's not exactly traditional to history. It uses percussion cap here, and the barrel is rifled, which, I mean, that was traditional later on, but most of your early black powder guns used a smooth bore, which had no rifling in the barrel. This one here is rifled. However, it's kind of similar to the early black powder pistols that they would have carried back then. So basically, we're going to show you how to load it here. And the procedure was pretty similar for centuries before modern cartridges were contained in a whatever, you know, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But your basic loading procedure here is this is a powder measure. It's pretty cool because it can measure a variable amount of powder. So I'm going to load about 60 grains of powder here. And now this is not a quick process. There are ways to make it faster with some more traditional or a little bit fancier tools, but I don't have those, so this is what we're working with. So, you're going to take your powder, you're going to load it right into the barrel. That should be loaded. After that, you're going to take a wad. Now, back in the day, people would use cloth, and they typically just stick it over and then cut it off with a knife. However, being that this is a modern era, we have wonder wads. But anything will do, and basically what this is going to do is just going to separate your powder from your ball, and then it's also going to help to kind of pack the ball down in there. Now this is a 50 caliber round ball. This is just lead. So you just stick that on there. Hello, Mr. Ladybug. Right? See, it kind of fits there into the barrel. Now, when you shoot a black powder gun, especially a muzzleloader, you have to make sure that you have no space in the barrel, otherwise you have a pipe bomb. So you're going to take your ramrod and shove it down in there. Make sure it's firmly against it. Now, if this was a flintlock, which is the technology that came before this is called a percussion cap, I'd have to prime the pan here with some black powder, and then this would have a flint that would spark and make that. But this is a little more advanced. It uses a percussion cap method. This was invented sometime around the 1840s, I want to say. I'm not entirely certain. But, so you have a little cap here. And what this does is this goes right over your nipple here. That is what this is called. So this nipple, and when this hammer comes down on it, it's going to create a spark that's going to go down here into this bolster, ignite the powder within, and set it off. So here we go. Boom! So as you can imagine, black powder has some disadvantages. I'm sure that you saw the cloud that just came out of that, and so typically when countries would fight with black powder weapons, you have the fog of war, which would roll in, which was all the powder and haze that would stick around the battlefield, and you couldn't see what you hit at all. Black powder is also extremely corrosive. It would ruin your barrels if it wasn't cleaned out. And furthermore, it creates what's called fouling inside the barrel, which makes it harder and harder to load. So we'll go ahead and load this up just one more time here for you, just because it's fun. And then we'll jump ahead in history a little bit. But this is the way that it was for hundreds of years. And so, you know, I'm doing this in a nice controlled condition here, although it is a little windy. Nice controlled condition, but if you can imagine trying to do this in the heat of battle, it'd be terrifying. So we need our Wonder Wad here, and we actually have two of them stuck together. Let's see if I can get that apart. There we go. Because believe it or not, two of these would make it very difficult to ram the lead shot home. As a matter of fact, that's pretty tough just because of the fouling there. Again, you take your ramrod and see how it's a little more difficult. There you go. Now we're going to take a percussion cap, if I can get a hold of one. And we're ready to roll. So, the problem, for the most part, these cap locks were very reliable. And there's an old myth that flintlocks weren't that reliable, which doesn't have much merit either. Sometimes you can get a bad cap, in which case it won't pop, or it'll just pop and the powder won't go off. I haven't had much issue with that, but it does happen. Anyway, we'll go ahead here. Now, these were typically designed to be fired one hand, I think. I mean, yeah, I don't think it was designed to be held out like a modern gun. You know, I sometimes like to steady it. You got to be careful if you do it this way, though, because it can come back and hit you in the face, and that's not a good thing. So, we're just going to go ahead and give it another shot right here. And boom. So, as I've said, the main disadvantage of loading it this way, and this is the way it was done for centuries, was that it was slow. Very slow. That's why we don't muzzle load anymore, except for fun. So you get into about the 1860s or so, and countries start experimenting, namely Britain, with enclosed cartridges. So no longer muzzle loading. And the question was, are enclosed cartridges the wave of the future? Which obviously they were. Now this here is a Snider rifle. This is actually a Nepalese copy. Originally this started life as an infield muzzleloader, which loaded just like that. What they did was they cut the back end out and redid this whole system so that it opens up and you can load a cartridge in there. Now I don't have the exact brass cartridges. This is kind of a little homemade thing here, but it should load and fire. So you can see just how much of an advantage this would be rather than going through that whole process. All you do is load that in. Well, I said load it in and then it comes right out. Load it in, pull it back, aim, and fire. To eject, pull back, open up, pull down, falls right out. Let's do that again. And fire. Eject. And there you have it. Now this still uses black powder. And at the time this gun came about, which was in the mid-1860s, you wouldn't see smokeless powder for several more decades. However, this was an incredible advancement. The British ran trials on those Snider guns, and they came out to firing 20 shots in just about 2.5 minutes. Compared to the infield that came before them, which loaded just like this, a traditional muzzleloader, that took roughly 7.5 minutes. So you can see the improvement. Black powder is incredibly fun to shoot as a hobby. Several people still hunt with it, and it's just a lot of fun. But it's definitely nothing compared to a modern firearm. Anyway, that's a little bit about black powder.